Hey everybody, welcome back. Coming up next, we have an awesome panel called The New Age of Ethereum. I'm not sure what's changed, let's find out. And here to moderate the panel is Riaz.
Thank you. Yeah.
Whatever you do, we cannot see you. It's so bright here.
Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful ETHDenver. You know, I'm really excited for this conversation because there's been a lot of discourse about scaling EVM and beyond on Twitter recently, if you've been following along with it. But there's a lot of noise and signals. So we are here today to differentiate between the two. But before we get into the conversation, I would love for our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Tomasz. I'm co-executive director for Ethereum Foundation, but just for 2 more weeks. And then I'm a builder on Ethereum freestyle. That's it.
Hey everyone, my name is Jay. I'm co-founder at Say Labs, and we're building a parallelized EVM Layer 1 blockchain.
What's up, y'all? I'm Ben, one of the co-founders of Optimism.
All right, awesome. Okay, so as I was saying, Ethereum feels like it's entering a new phase. For years, we've been talking about, can we scale? But the question is now, moving towards how should we scale and how much coordination is necessary. We have dozens of L2s, competing L1s, fragmented liquidity. ZK is doing really well. And now a formal platform team, which was announced by the Ethereum Foundation on Monday, to consolidate all of this. Actually, Tomasz and I were talking before this panel, and he said it was his idea. I would love for him to take us through that and what that entails before we get into the meat and bones of this conversation. So what is the platform team?
And definitely my idea for the name initially, but it's definitely people like Josh Rudolph and others on the communication and protocol that fill in everything else. So the idea was to define Ethereum space as something that is chosen by users, by L2s, by applications as a default, as the best option because of the quality of the chain and because of the quality of the offering, the value offering of the chain, instead of ever talking about you have to choose Ethereum because of values or alignment or so on. So thinking of Ethereum as, like, if we focus on engineering and quality engineering and research, and if you design everything very well, then those teams that we want to see building on Ethereum will naturally choose it. So it's our responsibility to build it the way that will naturally lead to the desired outcomes, instead of being on Twitter and telling people what to do, what not to build, why you're building this, why you're building it this way. So new era for scaling. So I think that we scaled L1 and we plan to scale it much, much more. So when you listen to Justin Drake, that probably we're talking about 1,000 times more. If you talk to core development team, they look at 2 to 10x more over the next year or two, and 3x increases every year. I think it's maybe ambitious, but actually that combination of ZK and basic scaling is nice. And nice to have it on L1. Even with 1000x on L1, my vision is that it will be used, and you'll still need L2s, and you'll still need different forms of scaling. That L1 will stay as this lowest risk chain, lowest risk block space, highest quality block space, but you'll have various differentiators on the L2s. And the platform team is just to deliver the highest value for everyone to choose the block space on L1.
Amazing. Okay, so one of the things that we were talking about right before this panel was also, is the current block space we have, is it being used? Do we need to scale as much? And I would love someone's perspective on this. Anyone, feel free to take this question. Ben?
Of course it's being used. I mean, it's funny to see the, watching crypto for many years now and participating in the scaling journey, it's funny to watch the moving goalposts of scalability just continue. And like, they're obviously headed towards the billion global population. It's also true that these things come and go in cycles, right? And so it would be very short-sighted to say, oh, Ethereum doesn't have super high gas prices right now. We're good. We don't need to increase the throughput. The throughput's not all getting used. These things are cyclic in nature. And I think it's undeniable that we're seeing a new stage of that as like enterprises and institutions start to come on chain. And if you think that that's like just a small number of people that's gonna result in a small number of transactions, I think that is very short-sighted. So yeah, there are always ebbs and flows, and the goalpost always moves to like what is real. If you told me 7 years ago when we were starting Optimism, look at all the users that we're gonna have today and all these L2s, I would have been like, oh my God, we've made it to the promised land. And of course, we're not in the promised land yet, but we're on the path.
Yeah, so one thing that I fundamentally believe is that blockchains are built for finance. A lot of other use cases don't make as much sense. And if you look at finance, current blockchains cannot actually support global finance at scale yet. One example here would be NASDAQ. NASDAQ needs 20,000 transactions per second, and that makes up 10% of global securities trading. There's no blockchain out there right now that can support 200K TPS. So if you look at it from that perspective of what kind of demand you actually need to be supporting, no blockchain is close, and that's why we absolutely need to scale. Also, from each individual blockchain standpoint, you need to remain competitive with everyone else on the market. If you see Solana, Aptos, Sui that are all trying to scale as quickly as you can, then from the EVM side, it's also critical to continue scaling, because otherwise you'll end up at a point 5 years from now where other chains are actually able to do 200K TPS, and you might not be able to, and then suddenly it doesn't become as effective to get developers to come and start building in your ecosystem.
Ben. Oh no, sure.
No, I just wanted to fill in the gap. So I agree that we will have so much more scaling needs, and there's like two parts of it. So it's also latency. So I think we'll have some hierarchies, very advanced hierarchies of regional, city chains, global chain. Ethereum will be targeting the global space, but the regionally, you'll have to have some L2s that will really focus on latency, and also we don't compete with the global chain, but in this particular city, financial center, we're delivering very low latency and super high throughput to talk about those like financial operations. And you know, when we're talking, it's 20,000 transactions per second now. When you enable the type of operations that you will be able to do in the fully digital economy, with the agents that we're expecting as well, then suddenly it wouldn't be even talking about 20,000 or 200,000 as 100%, but we start talking about millions of transactions per second. So I don't think we are nowhere close to the limits. I mean, when you think about internet as we asking for more and more and more throughput, and then soon we'll ask again, and it's also cyclical. It's like for maybe a few years we feel like, oh, now internet is fast enough, but then you have like 4G, 5G, and then you start streaming movies, then you start streaming 4K movies, and so the quality increases, and maybe it starts feeling like too much, but it's great. That's how you keep improving the value delivery.
Okay, so agreed there. I'm going to go back to you, Ben. In today's landscape, what is the role of L2s?
Scaling the block space, baby. Come on now. You know, I think to build off what Tomasz was saying there, I think one of the greatest lies that we repeatedly tell ourselves as an industry is that we have met some scalability metric and the story is over. The story is complete. Just like it is true that goalposts are moving can be a little annoying to say, well, what do you mean nobody's using the block space? Look how many people are using the block space. In the same vein, those goalposts should be moving because we will always have to continue handling throughput. And so, you know, I could give you the technical architectural answer where a layer 2 embeds its security into the layer 1, and therefore you have an obvious multiplier effect on the amount of total block space, the amount of total throughput that you can handle, giving any one fixed amount of like L1 security unit. But I think if you zoom out, I think the role of L2s is to continue pushing that envelope in ways that don't make sense for a base layer to be able to do so. So from our perspective, the story is to continue innovating. We're not going to be done with this. There's not going to be some moment in time in which we have solved the scalability and no more transactions are needed. It's just not a realistic thing to say.
100% agreed with that. Follow-up question, have L2s delivered on their promise? What they promised a couple of years ago, has that been delivered? And I know it's like an ongoing story, but I would love your take on that.
I would say we're in the process of delivering because we're continuing along the journey. So we're at one higher point than we were earlier on in the journey, and there will be more points to go, and we need to keep delivering in that regard, right? It's kind of like saying, I mean, I don't know. I think to like a historical example is like Facebook as like one of the like first things that really took distributed systems from like theory to practice was Facebook saying, we're going to run all of our servers on consumer hardware. We're going to shard all these users, and we're going to support this viral Facebook application. And I think it's fair to say that the L2s have done a lot of the groundwork. I mean, we have hundreds of chains that are embedding their security into Ethereum, that are extending the Ethereum block space with different properties. They're innovating on that in different ways, and they're all being used. Many of them are being used. But it's not like when Facebook accomplished that and got to the 1 billion user mark, and they had done it on consumer hardware for the first time, everybody like packed up their bags and said, well, we delivered on the promise of database scalability for Facebook, and so we're not going to innovate anymore. Of course not. Everybody continued to innovate and building better databases, and the story does not look the same today as it did in the early 2010s. So, yeah, like I said, it's a moving target. You're never going to deliver on the holy grail and complete the story. We're just working our way through the steps.
Got it. All right, moving tracks to JU a little bit. Beyond token economics, what structurally justifies a new L1 today?
Yeah, so I'd clump new L1s and new L2s largely in the same bucket. And I would say that there's 3 reasons why someone would want to build new infrastructure. The first one is if you're an enterprise or an institution and you want to have complete control over everything that happens. That is a very clear reason why you would go and build something yourself, build the entire infrastructure yourself so you have complete control versus relying on someone else. And I think there's multiple angles to this. There's like the regulatory compliance angle. There's also the commercial angle. From the enterprise side, a lot of them would prefer to have their own dedicated block space. The second reason is around performance, which is very related to this panel. If you're going to try to get the highest possible performance, it's easier once you control every single part of the stack. And specifically, if you don't need to rely on some type of external DA dealer, especially like using Ethereum for DA right now. So you are able to have higher throughput that you're able to enable if you're able to control the entire stack yourself. And I would say that the third reason is if you want to have some kind of custom functionality. If you want to have something at the, for example, execution layer, or if you want to have something at the data propagation layer, that's much easier to do if you build your own dedicated infrastructure versus if you built on something that's already existing. So I do think we're going to continue seeing many, many more experiments of people building their own infrastructure. And I think it's going to be only really make sense if it's one of those 3 things, because that's how you really grow the pie. Otherwise, you're basically just competing with existing things, especially competing with Ethereum for users. And that really doesn't make as much sense to be doing.
What is, say, optimizing for that Ethereum plus other L2s cannot?
Yeah, I mean, so what we've been focused on for the past 4 years is helping improve performance for finance. So specifically, we launched the parallelized EVM in 2024, and the biggest focus right now is on, say, Giga, which is helping get up to 5 gigagas per second. Building something like that right now on Ethereum, using Ethereum for data availability isn't really possible, which is why we're taking the approach of continuing to build a dedicated layer 1.
If tokens disappeared today, how many new L1s and L2s will exist?
Many, lots. I mean, what do you mean? If the tokens could disappear, then it wouldn't be a blockchain, right? We're decentralized and immutable. But a lot. In fact, I think the good news in the era of crypto adoption that we're in is that it's not all centered around speculative token speculation. It is around real use cases. I think my favorite stat from 2025 is the decorrelation of stablecoin usage and speculation. If you look at all of the other years, yes, the stablecoin charts were going up and to the right, but their transaction volumes were exactly correlated with market volatility. The more volatile the market was, the more people were moving stablecoins. The obvious conclusion is that people were using stablecoins to speculate on crypto assets. The last year was the first year where we saw a gap actually form between those 2 things. That right there is evidence that if tokens disappeared, the remainder of that gap is still going to be in use.
Yeah, so I probably have the opposite viewpoint over here, where I think that if you take away tokens, and by tokens I'm including stablecoins over here, crypto blockchain rails right now, they wouldn't really make sense to be using. And if you zoom out about what actually has product market fit right now in crypto, it's basically stablecoin / payments and then trading. Those are the 2 main things that have found actual PMF, and both of them require using tokens to do things. And if you take away the token aspect, then, I mean, for example, if you take away stablecoins, there's not really a financial system that you can build on top of this. I think speculation you can take away, and there will still be a lot of use cases, but tokens more broadly are necessary for things such as stablecoins and just everything else that has been built in the existing crypto system.
Yeah. Does your question mean, are we taking away all tokens, period, or we keep around stablecoin? Like, there has to be something left. I agree, if we just took away all of crypto, crypto would not be used anymore.
I loved both of these answers. I think they cover very different dimensions. Tomasz, next question is for you. Do you have anything to add to that, first of all, to that narrative?
Nothing. I think we would go back to barter without tokens. It's like, what would be the markets doing without prices?
Okay. All right. In a world where like Ethereum massively scales L1, what value can rollups bring to the table, and what should rollups do to optimize that value?
So nowadays, I almost have to have two paths of answering things. So probably many of you, or some of you, may have heard me talking about the agentic vision and so on. So in that agentic vision, or maybe both are similar. So first of all, I see the rollups bringing some aspect of branding, the fashion of what you want to deliver for new generations, for different niches of the markets, different regions, cultures, and so on. So with Ethereum, you have some message that you deliver what Ethereum is, what its values are, and what are the absolutely fundamental aspects of it. So the L2s can bring that differentiation, that may be aspect of how do you feel when you use this particular chain as a product. And then this is aspect of sales, distribution, like building distribution channels by talking to the right market subgroups. So that's for people, and if you assume that agentic AI behaves similarly, that it has some aspirations and preferences, then the same thing can happen with L2s. Then the competition for efficiency and for the best technology. So again, if you think the market is ultra efficient, when you have AI consistently choosing the best paths and being like ruthless with designing the blockchains that it wants to use, then the L2s layers become those experimentations of solutions that are hyper-optimized for particular region, again, particular sub-market. And the AIs operating in that market choose those L2s, and they have to compete. And that world accelerates extremely, so changes might be very, very sudden. And then L1 is more source of stability, the global stability, and some kind of inertia against the changes to the governance that happen too fast. So L2s are differentiators of the market structures, branding, architectures that are maybe associated with markets or regions culturally. You have different infrastructure in Tokyo and maybe in Europe and in Mumbai and in New York, and you can build different systems that take advantage of the type of infrastructure, the local latencies, the type of trades that are being executed. Is it region that is more focused on art and NFT and streaming, or is it region that is more focused on the high frequency trading and so on? And then you deploy blockchains that are addressing this particular small markets.
Yeah, one additional thing that I'll add on is I think all layer 2s moving forward should be chains that help grow the pie versus competing for the same sets of users. And I think what I'm most excited about is new enterprises coming on that are launching their own chain. I used to work at Robinhood before, so seeing Robinhood, for example, come in, and Coinbase as well, I think those are really exciting trends to see, because they're bringing in tens of millions of new users, and that's really how you go past the 10,000 users that everyone's competing for right now in crypto.
I'll also throw in that I think one of the goals of the L2s needs, and really this is a broader goal of the crypto industry in general, is to end the tribe of the chain. Like Tomasz, I very much agree that differentiation and branding and distribution channels and all of these things are very important. I also think we need to consider those things holistically as far as on-chain applications themselves go. One of my goals is to break down these artificial boundaries of chains that are just a little box that sits here and that thing has the brand. These are ecosystems of technology and applications on top. And so I think we need to do a much better job not thinking about the chains, but thinking about the apps, thinking about the users and framing it that way.
I was speaking to you about this outside. I 100% agree with that. We get so tunnel visioned with technology that we don't think about who we're building for and what needs to happen to really get that adoption. All right, I have tons more questions, but in the interest of time, I'm looking at the timer right in front of me. A last question for everyone is, what are some of the projects that you've seen that are taking interesting scaling directions? Or if your project is taking that, I would love for you to talk about it, final parting words. What are some of the projects that are scaling that people should be paying attention to? or scaling directions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could go first. I mean, I'll avoid talking about Say too much. Just brief plug for Say. We are building Say Giga. So we're using Autobahn consensus, moving towards the multi-concurrent producer model. And I think that direction is the direction that a lot of chains are going to go in. So we're already seeing many alt chains like Solana, Aptos, we moving in that direction as well. The other thing to Tomasz's point from before around agents, I think X402 is going to be a really interesting way that agentic payments is going to happen in the future. And I think specifically, if you look at like all of these OpenClaw bots that are agents that are like starting to actually engage in commerce, you're going to start seeing more and more of them actually trying to do payments. And credit card rails only work above a certain size. If you're using Stripe, for example, you need to have at least a 50-cent minimum charge. So for anything tied to microtransactions, that will be agents. And I think that'll be something like X402 being used by agents to do stablecoin payments. So that'll be interesting to follow along with.
I think on the scaling side, the ZK VMs on the L1 side, so everything that the teams at the foundation are working on, researching. So this is just delivery of scaling the supply, but also like total reimagination of how the L1 should look. And then I think that actually even more important is the demand side, because this is really what causes the scaling to make any sense. And when you look at those Web4 projects now, which is like autonomous agents that are just self-replicating and so on. So sure, it is silly for now, and it's not really autonomous and cannot really make money to pay for itself. But the moment when it switches to that stage, then we have this massive demand part that will drive scaling properly. We'll say, look, we'll have the reason to deliver that speed up.
Yeah, I mean, agree with both of those. I think in general, one of the key themes that I'm starting to see propagate in a lot of different scaling projects that we are really accepting first class, I would summarize as like pipelining. I think this is something that we really, the innovation of Ethereum and smart contracts as a state machine, as like a computer that you can program in the cloud is very, very powerful. I think what we're starting to evolve towards is the notion that there are streams of data that propagate into these state machines. And so if you look at something like Riaz is really pushing the limits by saying these blocks don't need to be big, they actually need to be really small and sent really frequently. And a lot of the patterns that I think we're seeing in this generation of blockchain scalability have to basically do with pipelining streams of data as opposed to sending around big chunks of blocks in kind of one structured monolithic thing.
All right, on that note, we're going to wrap up this panel. Where can people find you? Twitter? Telegram?
Twitter.
Twitter.
Here, Telegram, Twitter, Signal.
Can we stick around for a couple of minutes if people have questions, since we don't have time for audience participation? Can they find you there? All right.
Sure.
We'll be around the corner of the stage. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and enjoy the rest of your ETHDenver.
Thank you so much.